Now, if you follow my channel at all, then you know that my favorite IEMs are actually the Moondrop Aria, until, well, today. Because I just got to try out the Moondrop Blessings, and I've been using them for a while, and honestly, these are really good. They do cost, however, a lot more. They're around $300 mark, but honestly, I do think they're worth it. Let's talk about it. Alright, disclaimer time. This is going to be more of a gaming review than an audiophile review. We will be touching on audiophile aspects, so, because, you know, that's important to the sound. That's just how things go. But we're going to be, like, focusing on those audio aspects on like how well they'll like do in terms of like gaming versus in terms of listening to music. So do keep that in mind. Also, these were sent out to me for review by Apos Audio, but this won't affect my review in any way, shape, or form. Anything you're gonna hear here will be my own personal opinion. That said, let's get started. Now, as we all know, with every Moondrop IEM is a Moondrop waifu, a feature that I hope Moondrop will keep on doing because this is goddamn great. Keep it up, Moondrop. Keep it up. But anyway, inside the box, we're going to get some pretty nice packaging, and in here, we're going to get this case, which contains our IEMs, and has a little slot for accessories. Anyway, with the case and the IEMs aside, we get one of those nice fancy braided copper cables, one of them airplane adapters in case you ever fly, a bag of different size ear tips, a pair of plastic tweezers, so you can place or replace the optional grills for the IEMs, and then of course you get a bunch of paperwork. Alright, starting with the cable, it's one of those fancy copper braided cables, and they want to keep it transparent so that you know the inside is that high quality copper. It's relatively thick so it won't tangle easily, and at the end we're going to get a 3.5mm jack which is angled. Further up the line is a metal splitter which not only looks good but also feels good as it is made of metal and it's just sure to be pretty durable from what I can tell. Mind you, there's no mic on this cable. Anyway, at the other end are the 2-pin connectors for the IEMs which are on ear hooks. Now as for the IEMs themselves, they're built very nicely with a metal plate on the outside, but I kind of wish I had the waifu editions where you can pick like a waifu to be like engraved on the side, but I digress. The body of the Blessings too have this really nice molded kind of feel. They just feel like they're custom designed for your ears, honestly, when you're holding them. They got a nice weight to them too. Just super high quality feeling, and of course they are transparent so you can see the insides of them, which also reveals a very precise design. Now these do of course use the 2-pin connectors for your IEM cable, and something that really stood out to me is how long the stems on this IEM are, and they do go into my ear canal pretty deeply, so when it comes to comfort, it's going to vary from person to person. Out of the box, the nozzles don't have grills on them as they are optional, and you can listen to them without them, but I'm going to personally put some on because they go pretty deep into my ear canal, and you know, you gotta keep out earwax, you know. With that being said, here's how they look on my head, and they don't stick out all that much, and honestly, comfort-wise, I found them to be very comfortable, and I do think it has to do something with its very nice molded-like design, because I'm pretty sure they put a lot of time into designing the shape of the shell. And this is even with the fact that the IEMs go pretty deep into my ear canal compared to other IEMs. Like, despite being very, you know, deep into my ears, I still found them to be very comfortable, but your mileage will vary depending on the size and shape of your ears. It does take a moment to get used to, but once you're used to it, it's really comfortable. Now, I've heard about the Blessings 2 before, but I've never got to try them. I have heard that they have like a really nice pedestal where they're sitting at that $300 mark and even beat out like earbuds like several $100s more expensive than them. And yeah, I didn't know why until I tried them, because what I can honestly say about the sound is that it's really, really good. Moondrop has like a really strong reputation of like always having IEMs punch above their belt, much like these Moondrop Arias. And speaking of the Arias, when I was listening to the Blessings 2, it kind of did remind me a bit of the Arias, but you know, their sound is definitely slightly different from each other. They both have warm sound signatures, with the Arias having a more warmer sound signature, and the Blessings 2 having a slightly more balanced signature, albeit still warm. So let's get a little bit more into digging into those little details with the Blessings 2. So starting at the low end, the Blessings 2 have a really nice, clean, deep bass with like a nice rumble to it. The sub bass isn't as good as the Arias, but it's still pretty deep. I do think the Arias can go much deeper into those really low bass notes, but the overall bass on the Blessings 2 is really good and really clean, and it doesn't bleed into the mids. The mids are really good and very well detailed from the whole range of the mids actually, and I did enjoy the mids on the Blessings 2 way more than I did on the Arias. The Arias had a little bit of like bass bleed, and the upper mids weren't quite as good as the upper mids on the Blessings 2, which was apparent when you're listening to like mid-tone male vocals. And okay, I'm getting a little too audiophile-y, but you know, the mid-range has more detail. It just sounds overall better and is less recessed than you would expect on a warmer set of earbuds. So that's why I also say that the Blessings 2 are, while warm, still try to lean a little bit towards that neutral side because they don't want to have the mid-range like too recessed. So mid-range in these guys really good. Now when it comes to the treble reminded me very much of the Arias once again because they're kind of similar to each other. They're very similar. They're both good, but I do think the Blessings 2 have a lot of detail revealed in the higher ranges without going like super high, so it doesn't get sibilant and it doesn't like shriek into your ears by getting too harsh. Overall, I do think it's really good at the upper range. I do think there's a bit of roll off. I'm not entirely sure because I feel like it could go higher, but it doesn't, which I don't mind at all because I don't like it when sounds get way too high. It just kind of hurts my ears because then you risk getting sibilant. And since I'm comparing the two a lot, the Blessings 2 are a much more balanced, more detailed, cleaner version of the Arias. It like took a lot of things about the Arias that I wish there was more of, like in the mid-range and like presence of details, and boosted that at the cost of sub bass a bit and a few other things, which we'll get into in a little bit. And that later we're talking about is now, because we're going to get into the soundstage and imaging, because that's where things kind of change a little bit. Now, the soundstage, I don't know if the Aria is necessarily larger than the Blessings 2. I think it's just shaped a little bit different, as the sound stages are, for a lot of IEMs, like long, you have more distance from your sides versus your front and your back, making kind of like a ovular shape where you're kind of like in the middle of the oval but a little bit below, because, you know, listening from the behind is not as good as the front. There's more space in the front typically. So the shape of the Aria is kind of like this. It's like a long oval. You'll hear more from the sides, whereas the shape on the Blessings is rounder. It's still an oval, but closer to a circle than the Arias are. This rounder shape compared to the Aria seems to be due to the fact that we lose a little bit of space from our lefts and rights, but we have increased space from our front and back, and that also in turn increases the space from our like diagonals. And for gaming, this is a really good thing because we're going to get a more accurate representation of sound and spacing as sounds occur all around us in games. I still should note that the soundstage is small because it is an IEM, but for an IEM, it's still decently big, and it's not too big for competitive use, nor is it too small for non-competitive use. Now when it comes to the imaging of the Blessings 2, it's pretty damn accurate, and I think it has to do a lot with the sound signature combined with the rounder soundstage. The size and shape of the soundstage gives a decent amount of room to work with, while also giving a really good idea of where things are, giving us a pretty accurate representation of where things should be in games. Now when it comes to the sound, there's a lot of detail in the mids and the highs, and this also helps a lot in the imaging and tracking of the sounds in game, especially bringing out sounds of like feet and guns without overdoing the sound. The overall tuning of the Blessings 2 make them just really good for gaming, and in my opinion, I think they're a lot better than the Arias for gaming, particularly for like competitive games. And that's saying a lot because the Arias themselves are like pretty good for gaming. Now I'm not saying that these IEMs would be like top dogs when it comes to like just competitive shooters. I do think the Blonde BL03s usually still take the top list because they have that weird sound signature that helps you track very specific sounds. When it comes to the sound of the Blessings 2, it's a really good overall sound for any type of game, whether it's competitive or non-competitive. No matter what you play, you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to be able to track what you need to track, whether you're trying to track enemies in a competitive game or just things in a non-competitive game. And the sound still sounds really good and detailed and immersive. It's just a really good overall sound. It kind of feels like the Blessings 2 are like a really big upgrade over the Arias. The Arias are basically a really good gateway drug to getting the Blessings 2, essentially. So I guess to finish things off, yeah, the Blessings 2 from Moondrop are definitely really good for gaming, and they do it better than the Arias. And despite costing a lot more, what you get in terms of the sound, like the sound signature, the sound stage, and the build, it's definitely worth it. That's all I got for today. So if this video did help you out, do leave me a like and subscribe for more content and hit the notification bell if you want to know when I'm posting next. Also guys, now and then sometimes I stream. I'll have the little details down below, and yep, that's it. Goodbye.